Hello and welcome back to another Uncle Tat's Creative Shack video. Here I am again with my paint by number set. If you are just watching me for the first time, I've been making a mini series on taking this kit here, this paint by numbers kit by Royal and Langnickel, set that I got at a local hobby shop, and I'm trying to go ahead and use the paints and everything that came in the set to recreate what it's supposed to look like. So basically we have a couple kids off to the side with a fence. We've got an older gentleman standing in the middle. We've got a green passenger train coming through a tunnel portal with a couple of red passenger cars. And off to the left we have a little house or shack. And yeah, so it's an interesting set. The paints mix okay, but they definitely need a minimum of 2 to 3 coats for complete coverage, with the exception of the black. That seems to cover everything. The only drawback I find to this particular paint by number set is that you have to hand mix pretty much 50 to 60% of what you see on here. The only parts that you don't have to hand mix is like the black in the boiler, and I think the green and the red, the lighter shades in those. The darker shades you have to mix of each. The dark gray you'd have to mix. The dark red on the jacket here you have to mix. So there's a lot of mixing to do with these sets, and the paint is, I think it's kind of a far cry from your typical acrylics that you'd find at the store. It seems to be a little bit more sticky. It's just an interesting type of paint, but go ahead, I'm going to stick this off to the side here, and we're going to go ahead and do some painting. See if you can see where I am. So I'm probably going to go ahead and paint the front bumper here around the numbers and the bumper posts here. This should all be red. So I'm going to go ahead and try that. That is number 11, and you can always go back to your references, and references being the picture on the box top. So where are we? Let's see. So I'm talking about painting this here, this red here is what I'm going to be painting on here. Now, like I said, lots of your colors require multiple coats to get them to be thick. To get it to be a solid consistency. So, that being said, it's really just a matter of take your time and yeah, just enjoy it. Just do the best you can. You know you have to come back for a second coat, so don't try to get everything on in one coat. Like I said, the exception of the black and maybe the real dark gray, everything really needs to have 2 coats. I abandoned the actual paintbrush that came with the set a long time ago because I felt that its bristles splayed out too much. It didn't allow it to be form a nice point, and I find that you need to have a nice point when you're doing this. You know, the best you can. You want to stay in the lines the best you can. This is an abstract painting in that it's not an actual scale representation of anything. Like, you're not painting the figure to look realistic. You know, it's a painting. So I find that you don't have to go exactly on the lines, especially with the scenery. You know, the squiggles here and here and the grass areas, you know, they have a lot of squiggles in them, and I find that to maintain your sanity and to get through the painting, it's often best to just, you know, just blot the color in and let it kind of fall where it falls. Don't go too crazy about getting it perfect. The other thing too, though, is that you can always go back in certain areas, such as where I'm at right now. You can always go back with a black. I believe it requires black around there at some point. You can always go back with some more black, and you can trim up any of your color areas with the black paint because it's very opaque. And here we are, we're going to hit this wrinkle in the paper right here where I'm brushing right now. The design that was laid onto mine, however it was done, there's a wrinkle that goes all the way down, cutting right through this area here. And I mean, you can't flatten it out. There's nothing to flatten out. It's just how it was laid up with the glue and whatnot. So you just have to do the best you can to get around that wrinkle. And it's kind of unfortunate, but there's a lot of different colors going on right here. So I don't think you'll see it in the finished product necessarily. And of course, you know, there's nothing you can do about it anyway. So you might as well just make the best of it. This is my first paint by number anyway, so I'm just gonna use it all as a lesson. So yeah, I'm not bothered by that too much. I started doing diamond dots for a while. Diamond dots is another form of, you know, picture painting, if you will. But instead of using paint, you actually use what they call little dots, little diamond dots. The design, it's pretty much like a paint by number in that all the little areas that you need to put a colored dot on have a corresponding number to the colored dot they want you to use. And the difference between that and the paint by number is that the surface is all sticky. So you can pretty much put the beads. You have to be careful where you put the beads because you don't want them to stick, you know, in places, you know, they shouldn't go. So a lot of times it's got like a special paper on them, and you know, like a special, almost like a wax paper to prevent you from, you know, making that sticky not work very well. I tried it, but I don't really like it. There's just something about the diamond dots for myself. I just don't. I can't get into them. I tried, but it just seems like it's just not my artistic style, I guess. You know, because you have to keep, you know, you pick up one little dot from the tray and you put it where it goes. One little dot from the tray and put it where it goes. That type of repetition for me just I just don't like it. Whereas this type of here, you know, you don't have to, you know, yeah, you keep dipping your brush into the red paint, but you can paint, you can do cover quite a large area before you have to go back again. And I think that it's just a faster process, and I don't know, it's just how I work. I just don't like the diamond dots, but they have their own interesting look when they're done, which is pretty cool. I can admire them. I just don't need to, I'm just not going to do them. So yeah, the idea here with this particular painting is I wanted to use, you know, everything that came with the kit. That's how I wanted to use it. You know, all the paints and all the, you know, the one paintbrush they gave you. But come to find out, the paintbrush they give you, like I said, it just wasn't good. So I kind of threw that aside. I still have the brush. I just don't want to use it. I find that you can't get fine areas like I can with this particular brush here. But yeah, I wanted to use all the paints. I'm pretty sure you could use, you know, acrylic craft paint like you could buy at Walmart or Michael's. You know, the plaid, or I forget the other brands that they have, but they're like 50 cents a bottle. which would be more than enough paint that you'd ever need for one of these. I'm sure you could use those, especially if you got into a pinch. You know, you absolutely had to have some paint, and you just don't, and you run out of one of these. My fear is I'm going to run out of paint in this thing, but not with the red in particular, because there's not much red on this painting, and it's not required to be used to be mixed with anything else. So it's basically these two cars here, the gentleman's jacket and the front bumper, and that's it for the red. But the pot size that they give you, the paint pot size they give you, is the same size for all the colors. So that's where I fear that the other colors that you required so much to use, do they give you enough of the paint? That being said, when I custom mix a color, which you have to do quite frequently with this, I try to custom mix as much as I possibly can, you know, a large amount of it all at once, because it'll just be that much easier to match it when, you know, you won't have to worry about matching the paint to, you know, another section of the same type because you didn't mix enough. But then again, it is a painting, and I suppose if you do it methodically, and you could keep the first mixture that you make all to just one side of the painting, and then the other side, if you needed to mix, you could put it over there. Okay, so speaking of that, let's go ahead and mix some paints, and that's pretty much the red, and I'm going to move the camera over a little bit so you can see better. So that is the front bumper, one coat for right now, and I will definitely go back and do another coat later, but you can see here, this is where the wrinkle in the paper is, where my brush is. It goes all the way down here, it goes all the way up to the top. There's actually another wrinkle right there. There's two wrinkles. Okay. But I'm going to go ahead and mix up a paint and probably do down in here some sections in there. So let's get some paint mixed up. So I'm mixing up some paint for this section here, wherever it says a 4 and a 20. So, and the best to my knowledge, what they want you to mix is this shade here. Let's see if you can see where I am in the camera. They want you to mix this shade here, but they don't give you the greatest of paints. So I'm going to try it anyways. I just use these. This is like a Pringles lid. It's just a clear plastic lid you can get off a Pringles can, or I used it from some storage cups that I got a while ago. I'm just going to continue using this. So basically, wherever it says 420 on this artwork here, that's where we have to paint in. So let's go ahead and try some spots. So basically over here, and this is a yucky color. That's another drawback to these sets. They'll have you mix the paint, but they don't tell you to what percentage you need to mix it to. There's no value, you know, 50% of this color with 50% of that color. They don't tell you that at all. You're basically left with the picture on the box. Problem with the picture on the box is that it's been printed, so the inks to use to make the box are not to the same hue value as the paint that they give you. So you're thinking, oh yeah, I can just easily, you know, try to get it to that color, but it's not as easy as it sounds. And the problem with that is you know, you don't want to end up using up all the paints that come with this just to make one custom color. And I could sit here and try to play with this for hours on end to try to get it to be the exact color to match on the box, but Eh, I'm not going to do that with it. This is representing a rail yard, so you know you got your train tracks are coming in, and you know it can look quite well worn. You can have like your burnt grass color, and you can have your soil colors, and it's not designed. That type of area is not designed to be luscious and bright green, anyways. It's you know it's a used area. Probably got some oil or some drippings from the locomotive, plus of course the ash that falls down um, from the smokestack ends up changing the colors of scenery anyway. So we'll just stick with this color, this shade that I made, the shade that I made. Now you'll see me dipping back and forth into some water, and the directions actually tell you that to have this paint flow off your brush easier, to dip it in water to achieve that effect. It's just really weird paint. Like I'm saying, I think it's kind of like a sticky paint. It's very bizarre. You don't normally have to do that with typical acrylic paint. You know, like the bottles that you get at the store. Say like this type here, this apple barrel. This apple barrel, you can get these for 50 cents a piece at Walmart, and there's a lot of paint here, as you can see. So that's what I'm talking about. With those types of paint, you don't have to be as they don't require as much care and attention as this paint does for some reason. And the little trays right there. So that makes this process can be kind of tedious, in that you have to, you know, as you see that the paint's not coming off your brush, and you have to dip it back in the water again. But this is definitely a learning process for me, and I want to share that with you guys, so that you know, so should you decide to buy a paint by number set, you'll kind of have an idea of what you're getting into. I mean, I still like this. Don't get me wrong. I actually enjoyed this. Like I said, this is for me, it's better than the Diamond Dots. But it's not without fault. It has its own little quirks. So I'm just going to finish off this section here. Hopefully it comes out good. So like I said, as far as staying within the lines, I mean, it is a paint by number, and the numbers are within, you know, certain areas. Obviously that's where you want to put your color. But we are painting abstract here. I mean, this is, you know, you're painting ground cover is what you're painting. And who's to say that the stuff has to stop right at the one spot? You know, who's to say that this tannish brown can't go a little bit into the green? What I'm saying is it's okay to be sloppy. It's just a little bit, you know. You can do it a little bit, and then you can go back and, you know, clean it up if you want. But you're painting nature, and nature doesn't have to have, or rarely does it have, perfectly separated lines between stuff. I think if you were to try to paint every single nook and cranny exactly the way it's depicted for you on these paintings, then you'd probably go out of your mind. Oops, I'll take that up a little bit. And like I said, this will need 2 coats, so hopefully by the time I get down to the end over here, I can come back up to the beginning where I started, and hopefully it's dry by then. It usually is dry by then, and while I have all this paint out, I can try to do both coats out in that time period. In the background, you're hearing water. That's my fish tank. That's actually kind of a soothing sound. I have a 29-gallon, basically goldfish tank. That's some fish I've had in there for a number of years. And it's actually quite soothing. And see how I do that? How I can cover a large area. Oops. You can't see how I do that. Sorry about that. I can cover a large area just by fanning out the brush like this. You don't have to get too, like I said, you don't have to get too particular with all these little cutouts that this blue, the blue lines show you what you need to paint inside of. I just lay the brush down fairly flat and find that I can do pretty good coverage that way. Now you might ask, well, what would I do if as I'm painting all this, and I run out of my first batch of pre-mixed paint? Well, it's a good question. You'll have to mix up another batch to do your second coat. And, you know, just hopefully you get enough hopefully you can just use the paint that you've already got on here now and try to match that color, and hopefully you have an idea roughly about how much of each paint color you put together, because these are all looking for in this particular set, they're all looking for a 2-color combination. I also think that once you're all said and done with this thing, then it's absolutely, that's it. It's done, ready to hang on the wall. If you felt like there was areas that you didn't really like, there's nothing stopping you from repainting those areas. You can just keep layering on paint. Um, for instance, you get this thing all done and you don't like this color here at all. You can go back and paint over it. Why not? It's just a lesson in sticking with the project and seeing it till it's finished. And I think that's a big thing for me. I would tend to get to a certain spot and be like, I put it on the back burner. My problem is I usually will bump into something that prevents me from going any further for some reason. Like I have to custom mix some more paint, or there's always some sort of reason that it's like, oh boy, I can't go any further. I put it on the back burner and I don't finish it. And then what happens is you get caught up in doing other things, and it just becomes another one of those unfinished projects. Well, I don't want to see that with this. I don't want to see this becoming an unfinished project. So that's why I'm not going to be so super nitpicky about how close are my colors and the way they're supposed to be. The directions don't tell you how much to mix of what. They just tell you what you need to mix. So that being said, I'm not going to hold myself too accountable for the finished color. And it's okay because you have to do a second coat anyways. There's really no way around that. More than likely you'll see the numbers through some of this paint. That's kind of a big thing that most people worry about with the paint by numbers. You'll end up seeing the numbers themselves through the paint when it's dry. So another thing with needing two coats, and if you run out of the paint color that you just the first color that you made, when you go back to make your second color, you have an opportunity at that time to alter the paint color for the second coat and have that match a little bit closer. So there's ways around it. You're not locked in by any means. But it's definitely best to get as much as you possibly can get done the first time around, rather than skipping out and only getting half of it done. So let's see. There's another patch. There's another patch right in here. So I'm going to continue painting. I don't want this video is going to be very long as it is, but I'm going to go ahead and continue painting, and then I'll either wrap this section up or I will see it in another episode. Probably, I think this is episode 3 maybe by now. I'll wrap it up and put it in episode 4. So thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.